Hi there, welcome to another C++ video tutorial. I'm Josef Botnar. In this C++ video tutorial, I intend to do another application. This application will be a bit large. I intend to use quite a lot of functions in this application, which will initialize an array, will fill up an array, will print out an array in a console, we'll make the sum of the elements in an array, we'll search and find the greatest element into an array, and finally we'll copy an array into another array. So I have this function prototype, initialize a, which has two parameters, fill a, another two parameters, print a, another two parameters, sum a, which has two parameters also, but if you have noticed already, here I used this keyword constant. That means this parameter will use constant integer as a parameter. So that means we can use a constant array as parameter into a function. And because I used this keyword constant, that means we can't change the elements of an array. Another function is this greatest e, which has another two parameters and the same constant integer parameter, and another function is copy a, which has three parameters, and this function is going to copy an array into another array. Down here I already written down function definitions. Each of these functions has no code inside. I'm going to do the code in a few minutes, and here I declared this constant integer size, which was assigned by this value 5, integer first array, and actually I don't need in this moment this array, so I'm going to remove it. So in this moment I stay with this constant integer size and this integer array named first array. As you notice probably, this array has 5 elements because I use this constant for the size of this array. Okay, so let's start. Firstly, I want to initialize this array, first array. So what I have to do, this application to be able to initialize automatically this first array. So I'm going to declare this integer variable, and on this line I'm going to use this for loop. Here you go, this code and this function will initialize automatically this array, first array, with value 10. To be able to use this function, I should call the function inside the main function, and here I'm going to do some changes. I'm going to use this first array here, and I'm going to remove this integer variable, and I'm going to use this constant size as arguments for this function initialize a, which is going to initialize automatically with this value 10, 5 times this array, named first array. But at the same time I want to print out in console this array and the elements of this array. To do so I should use another function, this function print a, and actually I'm going to use the most of this code inside here on this function print a, and I'm going to do the following changes. And now I'm going to use this function to be called inside the main function here, and I'm gonna to do the following changes. Here I'm gonna to write the name of this array, first array, and this integer variable will be changed by the name of the constant size. Just a very short, this variable has the ability to hold entirely array, all elements of an array, because this variable is gonna to hold the memory address of an array. So that's why this variable is able to hold all the elements of an array. In my last video tutorial, I talked about how you can use an array as function argument. So please watch this video tutorial if you want to know more about this. Okay, let's go ahead and let's compile this application and let's release it in console. I've got some errors here. Let's see what it's about. Yeah, here this function should return a value. So I'm gonna to write this value here, and as well this should return a value. Okay. Let's compile again. Now all is alright, no errors. Let's release this application in console. As you can see, this is the output of this application in this moment. Actually, this array, first array, was initialized with these values with 10 5 times. As I used these functions, the first one is going to initialize, and the second one, print A, is going to print out in console the elements of the array. So let's go ahead. I want to use this function fill A to fill up an array, enter the elements from keyboard. I go inside this function and I copy those lines because they are very similar here inside this function. And here I'm going to do the following changes. Cin. Now I'm going to use this function inside the main function here. Here I'm going to use this cout, output the new elements of first array is, and here I'm going to use again this function to print out in console the new elements of this array, first array. Let's release again this application in console. Here you go. Let's enter the elements of first array from keyboard. Let it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Enter. Here you go. Output the new elements of first array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is another function which I used inside this code, which filled up this first array with the new elements. These 10 elements was changed by another elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I used this function here on this line. This function was called and filled up the first array with the new elements. Further, I want this application to calculate the sum of the new elements of the first array. So I'm gonna go inside here the sum A function. So I'm gonna to first to copy and paste inside this sum A function these lines, and here I'm gonna to do the following changes. Sum plus equal, and here the array, and that means I should use another, I should declare another variable sum, and let's initialize it with 0. I don't need this cout here. I'm going to remove it. So this is the code which will calculate the sum of the new elements of first array. Just I notice here this function is going to return a value because I used this integer type. So this is not void type, this integer. That means this function will return a value. Here I'm going to use this variable sum, which holds the result of summing the new elements of first array. So I'm going to go now again inside the main function, and I'm going to copy here this sum function, and I'm going to do a few changes inside this calling function. I'm going to use this cout object, and I'm going to write this text, the sum of the new elements, and here end line. So let's see what is going to be. Let's release this application in console. Let's type the value for the first array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let it be those values. Enter, and here you go. The sum of the new elements of the first array is 15. So this function worked properly. Another function which I'm going to do is to find the greatest position inside of first array, and to find the greatest element inside the first array. To do so, I'm going to go inside this function. Maybe you already know this is integer type function. That means this function will return as well a value, an integer value. And I'm going to declare this I variable, another variable max, which will be initialized by 0. I'm going to use again this for loop, so I'm going to copy from this function inside here, and here I'm going to use this if conditional structure, and this test, which is going to search for the max element inside of first array. And this function is going to return the value which this function holds. Let's go and use this function inside the main function. Again, I'm going to use this cout object of the greatest element in first array is. Now I'm going to pass the function, and here I'm going to do a few changes. Here will be the array, the name of the array, first array, and here the name for the constant size. And here I'm going to use the end line to have a new line in console. The function will find position of the greatest element inside the first array, but also I want this application to display in console the greatest element inside of first array. To do so, I copied these lines and I pasted here, and I'm going to use to change this code like that. Because this function is going to actually to return the position which contains the greatest element, I can use it inside the square brackets of this array, first array, and in this way this application will print out in console the greatest element of this array, first array. Let's release again in console this application. Let's type the elements of first array. Here you go. The position of the greatest element in the first array is 4, which is obviously, if you count each position, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the 4 position contains the max element inside first array, and here I should change the text actually, because here it should be the greatest element inside first array is 5, which is obviously here are the elements of first array, so 5 is the greatest element. So let's change here the text. The greatest element in first array is. And now I want to copy the first array into another array. To do so, I need another array. Let it be a second array. Let it be the same size. And I go down there. Where is this function copy? It is here. I'm going to use actually again this for loop. The code here is not very difficult. Actually, I'm going to use this assignment formula. Actually, this array, which here has this name B, will be assigned by a array. Actually, this is a variable, it's not an array. So this a variable will hold elements, all the elements of a array, and B will hold all the elements of the second array. Let's declare this I variable as an integer. Now it's alright. Let's use this function inside the main function. So let's do the changes. Here I'm going to use this first array. Here the second array. And here the constant size. Here you go. Here I'm going to use the cout object. And here I'm going to use again this function, and here I should change the name of array from first to second array. And just I noticed first I should fill in this second array, so that means I can copy those lines from here, and I can paste those lines here. And I should change here the first array with second array, and here as well first array changed with the second array. Here you go. I think this application in this moment is finished. Get to the end. Let's compile this application. Oh, it's alright. No errors, as you can see. And let's release it in console. Let's type the element of first array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So output for the new elements of first array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these elements, these 5, 10, was changed by those elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entered from a keyboard. The sum of the new elements of first array is 15. The position of the greatest element in the first array is 4. The greatest element in first array is 5. And actually now I should enter the elements for the second array. So let it be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, enter, and output the new elements of the, here should be second, I forgot to change this, but actually should be the second array is 10, 20, 30, 40, 15, second array after copying the element from the A element is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see the elements of second array was changed because this second array had before these elements, but they were changed with these elements because I used this function here, which copy the elements from the first array. So the elements of a first array was copied into the second array. So I should change here the first with second here, and maybe good idea to write here this text: enter the elements for first array and I'm going to copy these lines here. When this application, before this application is going to fill up the second array, here you go, and I should change this first array with the second array. Okay, let's compile this application. Let's release it in console. Here you go. Now I think this output is more understandable. So enter the elements for first array: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you go. Here is the output for the first part of this application, for the first array. And now here I've got this text which is telling me enter the elements for second array. So I'm going to enter the elements for the second array: 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And here you go. Output, the new elements of second array is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And here its elements was changed because the first array was copied into second array. So maybe here is good to have a bit space. Let's use here again cout and line to put in console a new line. Let's release it again. Let's see how this is going to work. So let's enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you go. Now it's more understandable. Enter the elements for the second array. Let it be 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and here you go. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching this video tutorial. See you next time.